What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-dub-techno, and we're going back to the Volume 1 International Ska Techno Review sublabel, a sublabel of Draft Punk's Stompin' Ground Records, and indeed, Draft Punk has a track on here, we'll get to that at some point, but this time we're going to listen to I Hear You, Luca, where are you? You coming up? She's thinking about it. But yes, we're going to listen to a tune by Benji303. I've said it many times, I'm a huge fan of his work, and I absolutely love that after Jaw Scoop, I would say the second most prolific purveyor of the acid dub sound is Benji, including on his 303 Alliance label, where he's had two separate 303 Alliance acid in dub releases, which it's not quite a sub-label, but yeah, there's a couple special releases on the 303 Alliance label that focus on acid dub. And again, Benji303 makes as many tunes in that genre as anyone aside from the all-time master Jaw Scoop. In any case, this is with the one and only Tiddles. Big shout out to Tiddles, Christopher Liberator's longtime wife and friend of the channel. Again, I reacted to, I think, all four tunes on the first Bitches Witches label, which is Tiddles' project, and she does a lot of vocals on acid techno tunes going back many, many years, and also is one of the members of the awesome band Dogshite, which I forget, I think it was Luca was attacking it. I used to have a Dogshite poster here, and again, I think this little ragamuffin when she was a kitten attacked it so many times that I had to move it. But yes, I have a Dogshite vinyl. Big shout out to Chris who helped me get that, as well as a Dogshite CD compilation which has some additional tunes on it. I did a few reactions of them a couple years ago. I haven't been back since, so this reminds me I should get back and do more of their tunes. Though again, I think when I label the video, I have to get creative, because I think if you put shite in a video title, YouTube is like, oh, like, we're gonna limit the number of people who can see this because of the apparent profanity. In any case, she's awesome. She does a lot of really great vocals on, as I said, techno tunes, acid techno tunes, and because she's not only one, musically conversant, a lead singer in a band, but secondarily because, you know, she's part of the techno scene and, you know, is involved directly in the production, there is a way that her vocals gel with techno rhythms in a way that, like, sometimes taking a vocal from somewhere, like sampling it from a pre-existing non-techno tune, it doesn't quite work as well. And although there are many tracks which sample pre-existing female vocals into a techno track that are fantastic, again, something about Tiddle's vocals just really hit right. Tiddle being Carmel Reynolds, I don't think I said her name. In any case, let's listen to Benji with Tiddles and their track Comin' On Strong, not to be confused with the 90s trance classic by Signum of the same name, which is admittedly a good tune. But yeah, this is an acid dub. You're good, Luca. She's like, are you gonna drop things? Am I really good? But yes, it's an acid techno banger from the International Ska Techno Review Volume 1 record, which, as I said, is a relatively new sub-label of Stompin' Grounds. It's actually the first and only release so far in the sub-label, but I hope that they do some more of these. So here we go, Comin' On Strong by Benji303 and Tiddles. say, such a good tune. And yeah, so first off, I'll say, as we get to the end there, I like the way it dismantles a little bit, but the horns and the vocal go right until the end, which for a DJ's purposes is fantastic. I would say, in this case, it's fantastic for transitions, because again, if you do longer transitions, it's great when you have a dismantling outro, because then it's like right as the new bass line from the incoming tune hits after a particular 32 or 64, usually one more thing is taken out of the outgoing track, and so you get these cool double drop moments where you're still hearing the remnants, the still burning fires of the outgoing tune as the new one is heating up and bringing in different parts as it's building up. So yeah, it's a great tune. I would say like it still could work as a mix ending track, because it brings everything to the end, which is to say tracks that have a really long dismantling outro, so when you get to the last like 64, it's just a kick and a hat or something like that. Those are less ideal to end a set on, because it's kind of like you're waiting for like a final sample or a flourish right at the end. But if it doesn't have that, if it's just a kick and a hat or a snare or whatever, then you could end a mix that way, but it's a bit flat. It's a bit like, oh, I was expecting a little coda on the end, or like most of the tune carrying right to the end and then a full stop, which is what that one does. But even so, again, I think it's great for a transitional ending. Secondarily, I love the acid work. The deeper acid work is very reminiscent of a lot of what Benji does, and I say that in the best possible way. He just has a distinct style in his like main acid riffs, and I think that very much qualifies. I will also add that in the main part of this tune, meaning after the breakdown in the middle, the big snare build up, and the drop, for the next couple measures, that deeper, heavier acid riff at the bottom of the tune, it kind of flares and flourishes in a way that reminds me, for you old school London acid techno / Stay Up Forever label fans, of Secret Heroes Control. So once again, shout out to Henry Cullen. But yeah, something about Control and the way the deeper acid work in that track, the way it sounds, I think there's a bit of a similarity here. There's also that higher line in this one. It's a bit more, what's the right way, like fishing. It's like this, it like fishes forward. It has like a very rapid dynamic to it, and it's higher in the track. So I enjoy the way in the main part of the tune where those are layered over each other. I like the dual acid sound to it. I will also say Carmel's vocals here, or Tiddles' vocals here, they're less elaborate or extensive, meaning there's some tracks where it's like a proper song. It's like an acid techno track, but there are multiple like verse lines, there's a chorus and so on. This one is more like a sample, though again, I believe recorded originally for the tune. But yeah, it's a shorter or smaller set of words, but it hits just right. And I especially like the way her vocals sound in the breakdown sections, when it's just sort of the deep acid pulsing and that little snare drum, which I think is sort of like filtered, or it sounds like there's an effect on it, and I very much enjoy her vocals in those parts. And yeah, again, it's pacey. It's got a high tempo relative to some other acid techno tunes, and as someone who's long played my acid techno sets at perhaps a slightly higher BPM than many others, I'm of course very sympathetic to that, and I've talked about it before, but that's kind of a 90s thing. Like, a lot of acid techno and acid trance in the 90s was 5, 10 BPM higher than acid techno in more recent times, even in the case, or even with some of the same artists, which again is not a knock, and I have nothing against an acid techno track that's a bit slower, even like what they call deep acid techno, which is definitely slower. It's down in like the low 130s or even like high 120s of BPM, whereas again back in the 90s you're talking 140, 150. But yeah, this is on the slightly faster end, I would say. And yeah, I love there's those every other reggae chords, like keyboard chords, that give it the flavor. I think there's a double time compared to that little rhythm reggae guitar, and then there's the brass, which is used I think more selectively but fits very well. So yeah, it's a top tune. It's the kind of track that, again, I talk about this a lot, like and I don't use the word filler in ways that others do, meaning for a lot of other people a filler is a tune that is actually being criticized. Like, well, it's, you know, it's forgettable. It's, you know, just a track that you throw in because, you know, you don't have any other records for your set. I completely see the word filler in a different way. I see a filler as the kind of track that keeps the vibes, keeps the energy, keeps the style that you're doing for your mix overall, but which also allows some other bigger tunes with, you know, a huge drop or, you know, like a really memorable sample to stand out more. So it's like, it keeps everything going, it's totally in the vibe of what your set is doing, but it kind of gives space to some tunes that are like a bit more attention grabbing. So yes, when I say filler, it's totally a compliment. So I'll put this somewhere in between marquee track and filler, and again, I can't emphasize enough, filler in a good way. But yeah, it's the kind of tune that for me like keeps the vibe going of an acid dub set, and then you drop something like the Jaw Scoop remix of Foundation or something where it's like, oh my god, my brain is being melted. So yeah, once again, big shout out to Benji for all his work and specifically for his acid dub. Shout out to Tiddles, awesome vocalist and, like I said, cool person who I have talked to a few times, especially back when I did the reactions to the Bitches Witches tunes. And also, of course, to Chris, which I think in the intro I called him Christopher Liberator, which is like never, like it's Chris Liberator, and his real name is Christopher Knowles, but I don't think he's ever called Christopher Liberator, so I don't know where that came from. In any case, from Luca and I, let me know what you think of the tune, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.